Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning.
Okay, what we're going to do today, we're going to kind of integrate our social studies into our ELA time, okay? So we pulled out a social studies standard, which is 5-5.3, and we're going to explain the advancement of the modern civil rights movement, including the desegregation of the armed forces, Brown versus the Board of Education, the roles of Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X, the Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about these people, okay? And these events that shaped the civil rights movement. Does anybody have any questions? All right. So what we're going to talk about today is called dash notes. How many of you ever heard of dash notes? What are dash notes?
I think that was a dash that goes before the writing.
What are they used for? Anybody know? Go ahead.
I think they used to brainstorm.
Kind of like brainstorming. Okay, dash notes are going to be used in order to organize your writing. It's a way of taking notes, okay? So, for instance, if you are learning about, let's say we're learning about Martin Luther King Jr., and you're reading about him, so the important facts that you pull out, then you use them as dash notes. Give me something about Dr. Martin Luther King that you know. Go ahead.
He said he has a dream.
Okay, he gave an I have a dream speech, right? So I would do a dash, and then I would say gave a speech called, and what was it called?
I have a dream.
I have a dream. Okay, do you see what I did?
Yeah.
I put a dash, and I didn't write it in complete sentences, because when you're taking notes, sometimes you don't have time to write a complete sentence. Okay, so you put a dash, and then you give the fact that you found. Okay, so what I have up here is a little paragraph or a few paragraphs about George Washington Carver. Okay, we're going to take some dash notes. You guys, we're going to do paragraph by paragraph, and then you guys are going to tell me some facts that I can write up here for our dash notes. Does everybody understand what we're going to do? All right. So I'm going to have some strong readers read for us paragraphs, okay? Corey, read the first paragraph loud and strong for us.
George Washington Carver was born into slavery sometime between 1861 and 1864. No record exists to confirm the date of his birth. After the abolition of slavery, Carver's four masters, Moses and Susan Carver, raised George and his brother James as their own sons, teaching them reading and writing and encouraging George's
Intellectual.
pursuit. George took his new parents' name.
Okay, so I want you to look at that first paragraph, and I want you to think of one fact that we can put up here about George Washington Carver. Okay, I saw your hand first. Tell me one thing that you learned. Doesn't have to be a complete sentence, just a fact that you learned.
His masters, Moses and Susan Carver,
Okay.
raised him to
Okay, so I put my dash, and I can say his masters raised him. And if I want to put their name, then I can put another dash. And what were their names again?
Moses and Susan Carver.
Moses and what was the other name?
Susan.
Susan. Okay? Give me another fact from that first paragraph. Go ahead.
He was born into slavery.
He was born into slavery. So I'm going to put my dash, and I'm going to say he was born into slavery. Okay? Read the second paragraph for us. Go ahead.
A teacher at Simpson College in Iowa, where Carver was enrolled, noticed his studies at Carver Green went to study at Iowa State Agriculture College where to distinction himself for another student named George Carver. He added Washington to his name. After a master's degree at Agriculture College, Booker T. Washington invited Carver to lead the agricultural department at the same prestige institute. He remained there for 47 years, teaching former slaves farming techniques so they could support themselves.
Good job. Okay, think of a fact. Look at the second paragraph and think of a fact that we can add to our list about George Washington Carver.
And readers, remember when you're reading, speak up so we can all hear you very well.
Over there in the pink. Tell me.
He was a teacher at Simpson College.
He was a teacher at what?
Simpson College.
Okay. So here's my dash note. And we can say he was a teacher at Simpson Give me one more fact. Go ahead.
He has a talent for drawing flowers.
Say it louder.
He has a talent for drawing flowers.
The talent for drawing flowers. Drawing flowers. So before we read the last paragraph, think about what is dash notes, Archivius. What do we use our dash notes for?
Like we take notes. It's like taking notes to help writing.
Does it have to be in complete sentences? No, it doesn't have to be in complete sentences. It's taking notes from what you've read so that you can refer back to it later. Okay? Let's read the last paragraph together. Let's try it together. You think we can do that? All right, here we go. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Carver taught his students and agricultural professionals that crop rotation, the practice of planting different crops in the same fields year to year, could help soil retain its nutrients. He created many non-food products, everything from shaving cream to shoe polish to shampoo, from plants such as peanuts, sweet potatoes, and pecans. Okay, give me a fact from that, Jakias. Eyes on the board. What's something from that last paragraph that we can add to our dash notes?
He taught the student.
What did he teach his students? Okay, and what would that help do? Help the soil retain the what? Good, to help retain the nutrients. So that's something that we can add to our dash notes, okay? So what you guys, the reason I'm teaching you guys this is because we're going to be studying the civil rights movement. And there are going to be a lot of people that we're going to discuss. There are going to be a lot of events that you guys are going to learn about. And in your social studies journal, you guys are going to have to take dash notes because eventually you're going to have to write a paper about what you've learned about the civil rights movement. Does everybody understand? Yeah. All right, so you're going to practice this today because we're going to, after you watch this Brain Pop video about the civil rights movement, we're going to talk about what you've learned, and then we're going to take some dash notes in your journal, okay? So what I want you to do, I want everybody to go grab your social studies journal, and a pencil. Turn to a clean sheet of paper. Put today's date at the top. And you're going to write Civil Rights Movement at the top. And I'm going to turn this back so that you can spell it if you need help spelling it. The Civil Rights Movement. Clean sheet of paper. Now, the Brain Pop video that you are about to watch is going to give you a little bit of background into the Civil Rights Movement. Your job is going to be to take dash notes. You know what dash notes are, right?
Yes.
You're going to take dash notes about things that you hear and see from the video. Go ahead.
Do we need to worry about spelling it correctly?
Do we need to worry about spelling?
No.
No. Do we need to worry about complete sentences?
No.
No. These are just notes that you can refer to. You're going to learn a lot of this when you get to middle school and you have to take notes from when your teacher is up there lecturing. So, now's the time to learn. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about complete sentences. Is everybody ready? The title should be at the top. The Civil Rights Movement and today's date. You're putting down your dash notes should be about important stuff. Okay? Important facts that you hear or see. Alright, here we go.
What was the Civil Rights Movement? From PJ. The American Civil Rights Movement was about having universal rights for all people, regardless of gender, income, or color. Well, skin color. Well, it's hard to believe, but America in the first half of the 20th century was a very different place. In many parts of the country, black people and white people couldn't leave the same lunch table, or even use the same bathrooms.
What did he just say?
Black people and white people, they could eat it.
Is that something that you think should be a dash note? Alright, I should see everybody writing. Remember, don't worry about spelling and don't worry about complete sentences.
Practice of separating blacks and whites was called segregation. Segregation was widespread, and you could see it all over the place, even in school. In 1952, a third grader named Linda Brown had to take a 2.5-kilometer bus ride to get to her blacks-only elementary school, even though there was a white elementary school 7 blocks from her house. Her father and 12 other parents sued the school board, and in 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional.
Alright, tell me something. Whose parent? Why? When what? Exactly. So somewhere in what he just said needs to be some dash notes. Blacks could not go to a white school. Okay? Then what was the little girl's name? Linda Brown. What about her? To get to school. And what did her parents do? Sue the school. Yes. What is that S word that show that blacks couldn't go to white schools? Yes, ma'am. Segregation. Remember, sound it out. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about trying to be really, really neat, because sometimes you have to just write fast. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go.
It was a landmark case known as Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. Well, it wasn't that simple. These new laws had to be enforced, and there were still lots of laws that discriminated against people who weren't white. In 1955, a Montgomery, Alabama seamstress named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a public bus so that a white person could sit down. Because she wouldn't give up her seat, she was arrested.
You should be writing. Destiny, tell us what you're writing.
I'm writing about how Rosa Parks had to give up give up her seat to a white person so she got arrested.
Very good. All right, starting it back up.
Well, that was the law back then. Black people had to sit in the back of the bus. Well, there was a man named Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who worked to change laws like that one. He was one of the great leaders of the civil rights movement. Dr. King organized and supervised a boycott of the Montgomery bus system. Most of the black citizens of Montgomery refused to ride on the buses for over a year, choosing to walk instead of being subjected to unfair laws. The boycott helped bring about change, and in 1956, a Supreme Court decision banned segregated buses. The fight still wasn't over.
All right, so who helped Rosa?
Dr. Martin Luther King.
How did he help? What did the video tell us he did? Arcadia?
They had a boycott.
What kind of boycott?
Boycott.
Bus boycott. And what happened when they had the bus boycott? Nobody rode the bus. Okay.
Dr. Martin Luther King and many brave men and women who believed as he did organized other protests that were nonviolent but firm. During what was called a sit-in, black students visited whites-only lunch counters and quietly sat there until they were served or until the store closed. Often, they were arrested. Freedom rides were integrated bus.
Let's go back. Sit-ins. What was the purpose? Get somebody new. What was the purpose of a sit-in?
Sit there beside white people until they sell clothes or to their people.
Very good. And oftentimes they were what?
Get arrested.
They would get arrested. Okay? That's dash notes for you.
Rides through the South, with blacks and whites sitting next to one another on the same bus. Blacks rode in front and whites rode in back. These peaceful protests were often met with anger and sometimes violence. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that something like that would make people so angry. A high point of the civil rights movement occurred on August 28, 1963. Between 200,000 and 500,000 people of all colors marched on Washington, D.C. for universal human rights like economic justice and freedom for all people. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom featured Dr. King delivering his famous I Have a Dream speech at the Lincoln Memorial.
ran it back. Go ahead.
When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Did the averaging speech at the Lincoln Memorial.
What was the purpose?
Because I didn't hear much, and I was writing down on the dashboard, but
Somebody help him out. What was the purpose of the I Have a Dream speech at Lincoln Memorial? Destiny.
So, blacks and whites can, share, can hold hands and, be together instead of be separated.
Okay. Yes, sir. You want to add to what she said? Go ahead.
Dr. Martin Luther King, I think he did this speech because he was tired of black students treated, and then whites get special treatment. So he wanted both of them to have the same amount of peace and rights.
You are correct. I keep you. Talk up for me.
I think he wanted white people and black people to be together.
That's right. Go ahead.
I think he wanted whites and blacks to come together as a big family.
That's correct. So what was the name of this, what they're doing right here? What is that called? His speech was I Have a Dream. But what did they call this? The March on
Washington.
Washington. For jobs and freedom. Good.
The very next year, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, making segregation in public facilities and employment discrimination illegal. Well, no, that's not the end of it. Racial prejudices and inequality are things that we still struggle with today, all over the world. The period of American history between 1955 and 1965 was really important. Many barriers were broken down in a very short amount of time. Our society wouldn't be what it is today if not for people who believe and continue to believe that their children and their children's children could live in a fair and just world. What's that, Novi? You have a dream too? Is it also about peace and harmony? Huh. I guess not.
Alright. So finish up your notes. Look back over your notes and think about that question that's on the Promethean board. Talk to your neighbor about what you think is a civil right. If you don't have anybody close to you, move so that you're close to somebody. What is a civil right? How do you get that? How did that get Three, two, one. All right. What is a civil right? Corey, tell me something that you think is a civil right. Make everyone equal. Here's my dash note. Corey, call on someone else to help us.
I think it is all right. So people can have the same amount of rights.
Same amount of rights. Call on someone, sweetie.
That rights for all people. That's probably that.
Say it again.
Rights for all people.
Rights for all people. Call on someone. Who'd you call on? Get a girl. Okay.
Rights for black people. Rights for black.
Here's my question. Do you think that all white people felt the same way about black people?
Probably.
Not all of them. There were some who even helped. When you saw the part where they had the march on Washington, they had a lot of white people that were out there too, because they didn't believe that the segregation was right either. Okay, so it wasn't just black people who were fighting. There were some white people who were fighting for the blacks as well. Okay.
And in the picture in the background, you can see a white person back there.
Yep, right there. Okay. So just know that there were white people who were fighting right along with the black people in order to change the way things were. All right, what I want you guys to do, let's talk about who were some of the leaders that was in the video. Name one. Just yell it out. Dr. Martin Luther King.
Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks.
George Washington Carter.
Malcolm X.
George Washington Carter.
What's her name?
Nope.
Booker.
Linda Brown.
Linda Brown. Good. What did Linda Brown do?
Sue the school.
Her parents sued the school. Okay. All right. What you guys are going to do? You're going to go back to your seats and you're going to open your social studies book. Okay. Open to page 418. Keep your writing, your social studies journal out, because you're not done with your dash notes. 418.